something happened. We don't know what happened, but it was enough to traumatize the village. And to what degree? Is it a hoax? Okay, so what are they asking for? What they're desperately asking for, they want more and more journalists to go down there to make more noise to get the Peruvian government to establish EMS infrastructure.
Gun owners, listen up. If you ever have legal matters that involve firearms, you need California's best firearm lawyer, and that means John Dillon. He can help you with red flag laws, gun registration, gun transportation, or maybe you just need to know that your guns are California compliant. John Dillon specializes in California gun laws, so put his number on your phone right now, 760-642-7150. That's John Dillon, California firearms lawyer, 760-642-7150.
All right. So last show of the year. Thank you all so much for listening or listening to the podcast. And it's the first or second, or it's already 2024. So we have a very special guest. Getting a special guest on New Year's Eve is even more special. So, Mike, thank you so much for coming in on New Year's Eve. It's a pleasure.
Thank you for the privilege. I'm always happy to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah, there you go. Mike Dasargo. Okay, so give us your bio and get right up on the mic so we can hear your
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Your intoxicating voice.
Get my Eddie Love on. That's an old school 90s reference for all the old people.
Yeah.
But owner, operator of Stronghold Dynamic, LLC. We're a training company and risk advisory. My full-time job, aside from my business, is I work for Pinkerton as a account manager. Medic, been into several different things, and probably the most pertinent recent thing, because my brain is everywhere, is learning quite a bit about emotional functioning through Dr. Jake Whiskerchin from Walk the Talk America. That does tie into the SB2 health component, mental health component a little bit. As well as a bit of learning video production, and that ties into why we were in Peru.
Wow.
Everything. And so everything gets weird. 2024 is going to get weird.
That's a lot.
2025 is going to get even weirder. It's going to be a lot more.
You got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, my friend.
I do.
You're a master of all.
Of none.
A master of all trades.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm just curious, Pinkerton, is it the same company
It is.
that was around back
It is.
100 and whatever years ago?
It is. It's the same old school. They used to have a tradition of you get the old school Pinkerton badge. Yeah. And
You have one?
I don't. They no longer do that. And so,
But it's the same company. It's not like
is.
some company came along and bought the name or thought it'd be cool, it would be nostalgic. It's the same company.
It's the same company.
That's amazing.
I
I
mean,
didn't know
certainly
that.
like the corporate structure has changed since then, obviously, right? But
there's a direct line.
There's a direct line for sure.
And I think Pinkerton was like, for those who don't know, Pinkerton was like when the unions were just starting in the early part of the 1900s. I think this is how Pinkerton started. They hired
Ford used them.
Yeah, they hired
Ford
union
Motor
busters or whatever, right? And they'd protect the plants while the unions were at attack or whatever. There was a whole big deal.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, that's where the term shotgun came from, because they used to ride in the front of the carriage with Wells Fargo, escorting Wells Fargo.
Oh, that was Pinkerton too?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's what an amazing history.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So how did you get into firearms? Let's start there.
Funny story, I used to hate guns growing
really?
up, because in the 90s, the only people that carried them were cops and gang members, and both of them hated me.
Yeah.
So, I was
that's a good subject. So, okay, let's continue on with that. Why, First off, why did cops? I can figure out why gang members didn't like you, because you weren't in their gang.
Right.
Why didn't cops like you?
Because I look like a gang member.
Talk about that. Well, in practice, how was it expressed to you that cops were not fond of you based on your looks?
I was guilty of looking like a gang member, because I wore the Dickies, I wore the flannels. It was like there was no real separation in the fashion side when it came to breakdancers.
Did you have hair?
I did. I had the
You'd
90s.
look more like a gangster without the hair.
And it's funny because I actually didn't like Honda Civics or a bald head, because that's like this prototypical Filipino. But in college, it was the most economical thing for me to buy a Honda Civic and shave my head, because I used to have a ponytail, and that used to get pulled, and I used to get kneed in the face in fights.
It was function rather than fashion.
That's it, man.
Where did you grow up?
South Bay, San Diego, 92154. Graduated Southwest High School. Actually, high school dropout.
In what year? When did you graduate?
95.
95. All right, cool. Okay, and that was like that early 90s was like like I don't know, was it the peak? Gang culture was huge.
Yeah, man.
Like gang culture was enormous back then.
We were having that conversation that we didn't call it active shooters back then. It was gang violence.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we had
Funny thing, huh?
yeah, we had the solutions for school shootings. I mean, we had it. They built the fences. I mean, we looked like a prison, but it was effective in keeping out other people from coming onto our campus and shooting up the place, right? But yeah, so it wasn't until
So then how'd you get into guns? Okay, well, actually, let's back up.
Yeah.
So police officers, what would they do? They'd frisk you, they'd question you.
all of that. I mean, I was out till whatever time of night partying, and I was always at the parties that would get shot up, hanging out with DJs. So we used to do house parties in South San Diego, East San Diego. For the listeners, there used to be a gang dynamic, whether you were in a gang or not. If you're a Filipino and you're from South San Diego, you'd get shot at in East San Diego and vice versa. It didn't matter if you were in a gang or not.
That's fun. Kind of it's like Lilliput. like Gulliver's Travel and Lilliput. So just because you were from one side of the and they were on the other side of then they didn't like you. Well, that's nice.
And it's funny because I have good friends now and we joke about that all the time. And,
from the other side?
Yeah.
Where were you? Were you on the east side or the west side?
I was South side.
You were south side. Oh, was south side, north side?
The north side were like all the people that moved up. That's where all the hot girls went and all the smart people went. And they tried to be gang members, but that didn't work out too well for them.
Okay, so when did you become a Second Amendment guy? When did you become a gun guy? I'm assuming you became a gun guy first and then a Second Amendment guy.
My martial arts instructor became Chula Vista PD. He retired as a detective. And he was the one that really kept me straight and out of trouble. Tony Puyot is his name.
Nice work, Tony.
Yeah,
Seriously.
he helped me out and gave me a job as security, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, good guys could carry guns. I got my open carry security permit, and I've been in security ever since. And then I started saying, oh, yeah, maybe it's not the gun, it's the person behind it. And I was actually arrested as a teenager when I was. The whole thing got dismissed and everything, but it was a Pacific Islander cop that gave me the lecture about, look, man, there's a greater reality beyond what your little microcosm is exposing you to, right? And he showed me like the computers, because we always, when people set trip, they're trying to flex their power or whatever, right? And then he just showed me how tiny we were in comparison to what San Diego PD had. He could just call it up, spin up a helicopter, and get his boys to come out, and he spoke to me in my vernacular of the time. Right. And I was like, oh, there's an entire other side to this. Not everybody's a bad guy with all that side. Wow. So yeah, that's what kind of got me into all of that. And I became a personal defense martial arts instructor. And over time, it dawned on me that if I'm going to be honest about personal defense, the most efficient way to teach people how to protect themselves is with a firearm.
The most effective self-defense tool ever invented by man.
100%. And that's where I'm at today. I take pride in teaching defensive firearms, which is very different. It's its own unique animal. And for those who don't know, I'm not a gun guy, as this conversation started off.
What do you mean?
So what I mean by that is
what's a gun guy and why aren't you one?
Right. And so, I am a gun guy to some degree, but I'm not the guy that focuses on marksmanship and puts holes in holes and spends weekends doing IDPA and
you don't
reloading my own
guns.
Stuff. And I'm not going to exactly agree or disagree with that, but I might have a certain quantity. But
are you a gear guy? Like, do you know all the latest, like the different
that's what
models?
I mean.
You're not one of those.
I'm not the gear guy. I'm not I'm a violence guy. That's what I commit my brain cells to is violence threatens us, so we should probably be better at it, right? And so I commit my energy into the mind and body functioning, and how can we tap into the skill sets that we need to apply it under terrible conditions.
Gun's just a tool.
Gun is just a tool. That's it, and I was just watching a video from Change of Behavior where they had a team going in practicing their close quarter combatives, and usually when you do live fire, it's relatively choreographed. You go in, targets, boom, 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 boom. This was comical. They played the music for Mortal Kombat because you could see they were expecting to do the choreographed thing. First guy gets tackled, and he just lets it happen. He just brain freezes. He doesn't extend his arm. He doesn't pull his gun under for retention. It doesn't do the things that you're supposed to do in a fight.
Did he call timeout? I would have called timeout.
I'm pretty sure his body language was calling for instruction. Yeah. Like, is this allowed in the rules? What am I supposed to do here? But it's that unpredictability side of things, right? And so the gun is just a tool. Just like,
I'm actually not a gun guy either.
Oh, wow.
I think a lot of people are surprised by that, but it seems like everybody knows more about the make and the model and this version of it and that, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I you know, I
You're
know
not a
enough.
Sam.
I'm definitely not Sam. Yeah, that dude knows everything. But like, I haven't really fallen in love with. There's only been a few guns I've fallen in love with. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know about guns. I'm not like a gear nerd.
Right.
Like all my guns are so simple.
Right.
Mostly stock. I only have a couple of Glocks.
Yeah.
I have a couple of shotguns, and I have one AR that I've been. It's on like it's AR version like 7.0 by now. And I'm not really a gun guy. I used to do IDPA, and I got to tell you that is some of the. For me, it was very good training.
Yeah.
Which is how I viewed it. I didn't really care if I won or lost. I was like mid-pack,
Yeah.
and I didn't really care about that. I cared, did I learn something today? Did I get better at it?
Right.
I think there's a lot of people like you and I that aren't,
Yeah, and that's what I hope to
that
do.
don't know what the hell we're talking about when it comes to
And I think a lot of it's kind of like what we see in martial arts culture, where you might get someone from one discipline and they're a loyalist to that, and this is the absolute way, and this is the only way.
Yeah.
And then when you pressure test it, you say, oh, wait a minute, it's about modularity, about context. When UFC and MMA came out, you start looking at the threat. What is the opponent? And you train to that opponent. You train to that context, right? It's not just Muay Thai reigns supreme, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu reigns supreme. It all depends on the strengths and weaknesses of the threat you're approaching, right? And so it's kind of the same thing with guns. It's, okay, which firearm will best enable me to respond in a counter-ambush situation? Because defensive shooting, and by virtue, is going to be counter-ambush.
What do you carry?
M&P 9 is my favorite, personally, just because of the ergonomics and the trigger, Glock 19, and as well as the Springfield XDS 4-inch barrel. Hoping to get an Avidity Arms PD10 once I can.
So I don't even know what that is. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
You're more of a gun guy than I am.
You're not a gun guy.
Yeah. So,
What, Alicia, you're a gun guy, right?
No, she's a gun girl.
No, it's kind of funny. People
You know
come
more
up
than
to
I
me-
do. You know way more
well,
than I do.
Well, it's just what it is through working with people, I come across things because I'm not one of those gun nuts. When people approach me or come to me for lessons, they have firearms that I may not be familiar with, or they're asking about things. Well, I take that as an opportunity to, let me go learn a little bit about that, and then I take the time to kind of learn a little bit about things I've come across. If I've not come across it yet, I'm not going to know it. So I that's kind of what's kind of encouraged me to kind of learn and grow.
Awesome.
But I was curious if he was going to say if he's looking forward to getting any newly rostered guns, but no.
oh,
Yeah.
yes.
What do you want to get? That's
Probably M&P 2.
M&P 2.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. Nice.
That'll make you a gun guy.
This is great. We're off. I can't even. I felt like it was 28 seconds.
Right.
I'm looking forward. And we haven't even talked about Peru yet. We're going to talk about
we'll get
Peru
into
and
that.
gun culture and some of
And
the
you
different-
already said it started off terrible for the end of the year.
Well, that was all on me. Thank God we got Mike here to save the show. For God's
He's not talking about food.
Not yet.
Hey, you want to learn to fly? You
Yeah.
want to get a pilot's license? Well, San Diego is one of the best places to get your airplane pilot's license because pilots can fly almost every day. You can learn to fly with San Diego Flight Training International. Gun owner radio listeners only, check this out. For 1 hour of ground school and 1 hour of flight with an instructor, you get to fly. That's a $400 value, but if you're a radio listener, you'll get it for $350. Just give them a call, mention the radio show. That's 858-569-1822. Or go to Learn to Fly, SDFTI. That's 858-569-1822. Mention you heard it on the radio show. And wazoo, you get to fly at a discount.
Wazoo.
You like that? That's odd to add that in.
Is that an ad lib?
You know what? You're making me hungry. I think I might have to go try that.
What, the burgers and the
Yeah,
eggs?
the
There's a
scrambled eggs.
Wazoo burger?
Yeah, well, I'm going to start calling it the Wazoo.
Yeah. But that sounds,
Give me a Wazoo platter.
It actually sounds good.
4 scrambled eggs, 2 burger patties, some mayo and sriracha.
It's like 2 fried chickens and white toast or white bread
Yeah,
and a Coke.
The
Blues
Blues Brothers, which is Doobie Brothers. Different
Some
brothers.
Here, we're going to throw a piece of lumpia in there.
We're talking to Mike Dasargo.
Yes, sir.
And let's talk about. So we were talking about your history and guns and all that other good stuff. Before we get into Peru, I wanted to ask. It's kind of an ongoing discussion that we've had little bits and pieces of the last month or so. So you're a Second Amendment guy.
Yes, sir.
When you were a kid, weren't a fan of cops.
Yep.
Had a cop help change your life.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
What is the question? Is how does a Second Amendment advocate? How can they be a back the blue pro cop guy too, or how do you reconcile the two? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually have, again, my martial arts instructor was my father figure. He was law enforcement, you know, and so I have a lot of friends in law enforcement. So, I mean, I think people look at these labels and icons and forget that there's a real human element there. And so I think as long as we retain the human side of things, then we could view the systemic things through that lens, right? Like, there's some systemic things because, for example, cops could buy some guns that civilians can't. That's not right. All right. There's no equality there, right? Government overreach, law enforcement, federal military, all tools of the government. Fundamentally, we want less government and more freedom, right? And so that's a challenge to reconcile. But with that regards, I think it's personally relatively easy for me to support law enforcement as individuals, you know, and certain things that you might need to enforce, I'll understand, right? And I kind of grew up that way. When I was getting shaken down by cops, I wasn't mad at cops. You know what I mean? I understood because, like, I've seen people get shot, and then, okay, I get it. You're doing your job. It just would, when they continue to treat me like dirt, that would really get on my nerves.
And
As
you didn't
respectful as
deserve
I
it.
try to be.
And you didn't do anything to deserve it.
Yeah, and I had scars.
Other than be who you are.
Right. And that was just the only.
Did you ever want to be a cop?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And it's hilarious. You know, Chula Vista PD explicitly told me they weren't going to hire me because I said I never smoked weed. You know, and they thought I was lying based on my zip code.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
Have you ever smoked weed? Okay,
no.
there we go then.
No, I'm asthmatic.
Well, all
I'm
they have
asthmatic.
to do is
I've never
is
smoked
test
weed.
you.
Not one time.
Yeah. So the reason why I hesitated is because
Alicia and
I
I
didn't
do
know
all the
that
time.
hotboxing was a thing, and I was around some people in a garage, and I don't know if that gave me a contact eye. I'm so ignorant when it comes to that stuff, so
It
that's
could.
why I don't know if that qualifies.
That's funny that they said that though. They were just like, "Nah, you smoked."
But they
pot."
did it just
Yeah.
by looking at you.
Yeah. They thought that just by
They
looking at
profiled you.
They profiled.
They racially profiled you.
Yeah. I mean, there was a voice stress analysis test, and they were insisting that my voice inflections were stressing when it came to that question.
You know,
So,
I'll tell you though. I think you hit on something that
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else has hit on, and I think it's an important point, and that's the individuality.
Yes.
And that's always been a problem for me. I've never been a guy who just likes groups.
Right.
You know, like, hey, I support
Right.
XYZ group.
Yeah.
You know, I'm always like, I don't know. Some of the people in that group are jerks. I don't support them. You know,
100%.
I've never been like a team guy. I've
Yeah.
never been like a, you know, my flag or nothing, or you know, I'm this color and they're that color, or whatever. It's not me. It's never been that way. And I think that has always bothered me. I mean, there are Second Amendment guys I don't support. There are people that are like, hey, I'm a gun guy. I do pro 2A stuff, and I'm going, that guy's a jerk.
Right.
You know, I don't agree with that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's as a whole, and I don't mean this in a belittling way, but there's a certain level of intellectual laziness to default and associate you with a label, yourself as a label, and associate other people with a label. Fundamentally, tribalism is a survival positive, right? Where you need to surround ourselves with people like us, but inherently you develop contempt for people who are not like you. And I think that's where the disinformation campaign, and now more than ever, being able to think in the same way that you do with a little bit more clarity in our perspective, looking beyond perception and take perspective, we can better sift through all the disinformation that's getting out there, all the polarized conversations that's getting out there when people dehumanize other people by calling them a liberal or a conservative or a cop, you know, or a hood rat, you know, instead of talking about the individual and what that person, how that person amounted to become that person.
You know, my old man, my dad's a smart guy, and he used to talk to me a lot about evolution in very broad terms. Yeah. And, you know, it seems like any time when I was a kid, I'd ask, like, hey, why is it this way, or why does that person, or whatever. He'd always take it back to evolution. Well, evolution, the evolutionary advantage is, and I think you're absolutely right, that the people who are alive today are the descendants of people who survived because of tribalism.
100%.
And I think that we're probably in the middle of we don't even realize it, but we're not even in the middle of. We're at the beginning of a kind of a social evolution that I think has been sparked by the success of the internet.
Yeah.
Of an individual mindset where we don't have to be tribal anymore.
Yeah.
I think probably the beginning of that was 1776. That's probably really
Right.
what sparked it.
Right.
You know, and that, you know, we're living in the country of the self-governed. we don't have to be tribal anymore. We can all survive on our own. We all have individual, nuanced opinions. I think you're absolutely right. I think that's an extremely important point.
And that 1,000% ties into emotional functioning, because you have to have a certain level of intellectual humility and vulnerability to be wrong, right? And we'll go into it a bit later. But those who aren't able to go through the distress of being wrong aren't able to entertain the idea of other perspectives.
And once you learn that, you're absolutely right. And once you learn that, when you look at people and discover that, hey, that person isn't confident, they just refuse to admit that they're wrong.
Right.
And it's actually, it's an enormous weakness.
Yeah.
You look at that person like, man, that person is so weak. They're so unable to be able to face reality. So excellent. God, man, you're an interesting guy. You need to come back more. This is awesome.
I'd love to, man.
Okay, let's talk about Peru.
Yes, sir.
So what were you doing? Well, first off, where's Peru? Alicia asked me, and I was like, I don't know where Peru is. I think it's in Alabama.
Somewhere in Mexico
Asia?
or something. It's like part of Mexico. No, it's South America.
Yeah.
On the coast, on the Pacific coast. Beautiful, beautiful country. Love it. As a matter of fact, it reminded me a lot of the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
Aside from the Spanish colonialism, which I've come to appreciate. I'm getting more and more, finding more and more in common with my brethren in Mexico and Latin America and such. And but before we talk about, we were in Peru because there is a human trafficking case. Now, abductions and human trafficking happens all over the planet. To explain why in particular this case captured our attention, I got to walk it back a little bit. I was doing executive protection in Mexico, taking executives cross-border to various places. And a close friend of mine had a client who needed to do some work down there. And so I just helped him out, set up some infrastructures, set up some Overwatch, and just made sure that they were good. And after 2017, come to find out that his client was a DoD intelligence officer who was involved in the UAP program.
UAP.
UAP is the unidentified anomalous phenomenon. And that term was discovered, or was created by the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And what it means is what's classically known as UFO, unidentified flying object, right? And the reason why they changed it to UAP and from unidentified aerial phenomenon to anomalous phenomenon from UFO is because their observances was that it didn't fit the definition of flying. There was no lift, there was no propulsion, all the data that they captured. A lot of it was kept classified because it's sensitive to how they collect data, right? So the sensors, they needed to keep that classified so other nation states wouldn't know how we run surveillance. And so in 2017, there was a New York Times article that was broken out by Leslie Keene, provided by Luis Elizondo and Chris Mellon. And that's what got us to where we are today with congressional testimonies, where there's one part of the government that's demanding disclosure of the UAP programs.
Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Are we going to make it till morning, or is someone going to come and are we hearing things we shouldn't hear?
Yeah, really. Okay. So you were down in Peru because of a missing person.
Yes.
An abduction thing.
An attempted abduction. And the reason why that one captured our attention was the guy that was close to me showed me the evidence that all this stuff is real.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
So the person who was abducted is involved with UAPs, or what we would probably commonly call UFOs.
The person being abducted was reportedly, the local folklore proclaimed it to be what's called pelicaras. The pelicaras is their folklore about these things that peel faces. That's what pelicaras means, that they're face peelers. There's a lot of cases where carcasses will be found and their skin is just completely, bleached white skull and the whole nine.
And the missing person, the reason you were down in Peru, he was, what was his relation here now? He knew about it, or he was one?
So the reason why we were interested in that case was the person that I helped who had a relationship with someone in the program showed me the evidence, and we all do jiu-jitsu together. And we question reality. We don't know what we don't know after seeing this evidence, right? And so we decided that everybody talks about FAFO, mess around and find out.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know what's real. We got to go find out.
So you went down to Peru just to
find out,
based on somebody who has disappeared and knowledge of possible UFOs or UAPs, I think you
Yeah, UAPs. So the
Okay.
Pelicadas.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now that's a cliffhanger.
It gets
gonna
weirder.
finish.
It gets weirder.
Excellent.
All right. Hey, Riverside, San Bernardino. Even with the Bruin case, the gun grabbers are getting more adjustment. Let's face it, all these laws disarm only the people that would use a gun in self-defense. Fight back and do something to defend your Second Amendment right. Join Inland Empire Gun Owners' Rights now. We're growing the 2A community and are getting more pro 2A officials elected. Membership is only $10 a month, so joining is real easy. Just go to iegunowners.com/join.
Okay. We're going to get right back to it, Mike. Okay,
All right,
so
cool.
we're talking to Mike Dasargo. You're talking about going to Venezuela based on a missing person and some, or, I'm sorry, Peru, based on a missing person and UFOs, UAPs.
Yeah, so there's
go.
this news went international. Daily Mail from the UK has been covering it. They sent an investigator out. They said that it was the illegal gold miners. It's near the Amazon River, and there's people that don't want people to mine gold because it pollutes the river. That's part of what compelled us. I mean, it sounds ridiculous that they would say like these gold miners have the money and financing to have these kind of levitating devices that would come down and attempt this abduction. She wasn't actually abducted. The whole village responded and started shooting at these things, and they flew away, kind of thing. Like they got hit. We documented all that. We've been going out collecting evidence, and we have some unexplainable things, probably because we're ignorant to certain physics. But if anybody could look at it and explain it, awesome. But we can't explain it. Anyways, so we considered, okay, it's either Pelicadas or it's not. Pretty simple, right? And so let's go mess around and find out.
That's how I look at the whole world. You
Yeah.
know? Everything
It's
is
Pelicadas or
either-
not. Right. And so we're going to find something out, but it actually gets a little more complex. And with that regards, that's kind of how we kind of got tied into the local gun culture there with firearms trainers and local security forces. Because if it turns out that it's some kind of cartel that is in fact trying to use intimidation tactics, which makes zero sense, because I'm pretty sure murder in itself is intimidating enough. I don't know why they'd have to go full Scooby-Doo and dress up like
Yeah, really.
Green Goblin on levitating devices and spook him to leave the village. And it's a remote village. Traditionally, it takes like 10 hours by riverboat on Ato Nanay to get there. We got a speedboat and we got there in 5 hours or so.
Jeez.
But yeah, we wanted to have access to a quick reaction force if we needed it, if we got in any kind of trouble kind of thing. And if we needed to source guns, we had the capability to source guns locally kind of thing, but we didn't need any of that. But yeah, that'll tie into the local gun culture, which both Mexico and Peru share a commonality in the sense that it's a matter of cost prohibition than legal prohibition. But they do it in such a way that it's nearly impossible in certain places. For example, in Mexico, you have to fly to an army store to buy your gun. But once you buy it, then there's certain conditions that you can carry it in the home. And then if you need to carry it, it's other loopholes. I mean, obstacles you have to jump through.
So it's much harder to be a gun owner in Peru.
Yes, given the economy of the common worker. But
it's a financial
Yeah,
thing,
that's it.
not a laws and regulations.
right. So if you're middle class or upper class, you're fine. You know, it's just a matter of paying the money and doing the exams.
So like if California had no gun laws, but a gun was $10,000,
That's it.
then it'd pretty much be banned.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And that's essentially what was happening with our CCW process. I remember I was like, oh, God, this is getting so cost prohibitive to do,
Yeah, it is.
you know, on an annual or semi-annual basis. Or
Every 2 years.
yeah, every year. Thank you. My brain's like all over the place.
Is that biannual? Biannual is twice a year or every 2 years? Or both? Bi-monthly is anyway. Let's keep going. All right, Mike Dasargo. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going. So talk more about what are some of the differences, and then what happened while you were down there?
We went down and interviewed the village, and it's very evident that the entire village is traumatized. They shared their side of the story. We all captured the interviews, and it's going to be released soon. We put forward, her name is Talia. She's a 15-year-old girl. She was essentially going to her backyard where she was thirsty, and so she wanted to pick some fruit from the tree. Right? There's an abundance of food on the planet, and all these wars are fabricated control of resources. Anyways, so as she's out there and she's picking the fruit, she just notices the leaves are kind of starting to float around, and these things that she describes as humanoids kind of descend and jump off this platform, and they snatch her up, and they grab her arms and legs, and one of the guys starts making a weird paste, and
Did she describe the guys?
yeah, they're wearing some kind of metallic vest and metallic boots that kind of click into this thing. They press down on it to activate it. Said that
But they were humans?
So this is the interesting part. They're speaking Peruvian, and she describes one of them speaking like a gringo. And so recollection is a hell of a thing, right? And so we don't know how much has changed in the anecdote and in the story, because it went from what I understand from speaking Spanish, Peruvian, to speaking English. And then I don't know where that started to evolve. But she said that one of them initially was speaking with a gringo accent.
So these guys on floating platforms tried to abduct her, and then what happened?
So they go to shove this stuff up her nose, and she starts getting disoriented, and she's trying to fight him off, and she's like jabbing him and pushing the helmet up. And when the guy goes to put his helmet back down, she screams. And another guy when I say village, it's not like National Geographic. It's actually has infrastructure. I think they have Starlink, they have power, they have buildings, and they have some that's not as refined. Anyways, people start responding. They hear her, they come down with shotguns, and the two, we call them humans, we don't know, right?
Bipedal
Right.
mammals,
Right.
possibly.
Probably people. I don't know. Aliens need to speak Peruvian. I don't know.
Beings.
Right. But I mean, there's some, and who knows, right? I don't know what I don't know. So
So the villagers started shooting at these.
yeah, and they
people.
jump on. The Peruvian one that didn't speak with an accent was trying to get the other guy to leave because they're kind of screwed up. They were rubbing this thing on her face and took out this thing, and she said she started to smell her skin burn and she could hear the sizzle. She actually still has a scar on her neck. Where people, that's why they think they're face peelers, because it seemed like, they put the cream on her face and it all puffed up, like it all swole up and started getting numb. We have the medical documents. There's video that night. There's a guy named Christian Caleb, who's the one who uploaded it to the internet to get world attention because they're so remote, they don't have EMS infrastructure for an emergency like that.
Video of what? What does the video show?
They show them chasing the attackers, the attempted abductors.
It doesn't show the attackers, just them chasing?
It's like shot on a potato. The resolution's so bad. Which is part of the reason why I wanted to go there with high quality cameras and everything in case we captured anything. But they cleared out acres of forest to create a defensive perimeter. Mm-hmm. They described the following months and the exhaustion, and a lot of their behavior and the characteristics, it's very much consistent with trauma. For several nights, like the women and the children of the village stayed and the men patrolled, and they had these other drones coming in that they tried to shoot down and they couldn't. They didn't do anything, and it got to the point where they just got so emotionally exhausted, they just did nothing. As a matter of fact, when we were there, the kids were saying, "Oh, well, there's one of the drones, and we all kind of like cops ran after it with the cameras kind of thing.
Did you see a drone?
We didn't see it. But the thing that was interesting to me is the Apu, or the chief, we were in the middle of interviewing. He was like, "Yeah, go ahead," and he just sat down, and that struck me. I was like, "Why is he not interested?" And then it dawned on me. It was like, "Oh, they're just tapped out. Like these things come so often. They don't do anything bad, and they can't shoot it down. They're powerless."
Could you hear it?
No. So we were in the middle of documenting an interview, and there was a soccer field, and all the kids were screaming it. And then some of our crew was trying to relay it to us without interrupting the interview. It was like, "Hey guys, there's something. They're chasing something out there." It was like, "Is this worth interrupting the interview to go check out?" And by the time we responded, it was probably already gone, kind of thing.
What was the conclusion? What by the time you had left Peru, what happened? What conclusions did you come to?
Something happened. We don't know what happened, but it was enough to traumatize the village. And to what degree? Is it a hoax? Okay, so what are they asking for? What they're desperately asking for, they want more and more journalists to go down there to make more noise to get the Peruvian government to establish EMS infrastructure in case this happens again. Because they're isolated and alone, and how long it took her to get to the hospital. She was diagnosed with PTSD, and it's unfortunate. I mean,
That is the weirdest story I've ever heard, Mike.
It gets weirder because when you really think about it,
yeah.
Okay, so everybody's reporting, and this is the thing is, okay, maybe she was intoxicated, so she saw something that wasn't there. But the people that responded immediately saw them as well and report the same thing, and everybody that was chasing them all saw the same thing, and it's all this kind of kind of like a hoverboard or a disc or something that they were
So they were like standing.
flying off, right? And again, this is remote, and so they would have to fly somewhere and then to a boat to get on the river and bail, right? And so, like, just logistically speaking, locally they all think it's like some kind of CIA operation, like, but the people that we are with were involved in those type of activities, and they're absolutely not. You know, the lack of operational planning, the lack of operational security, you know, just the way everything just kind of fumbled out. It's doesn't reflect any kind of special activities.
Did you ever think of giving the people in the village cameras?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, we're doing what we can. Our priority was to help her get therapy, and so that was our immediate thing. Was just
So I'm
muster
thinking
the
a
cash.
camera, so at least they
Right.
could capture
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yes, yeah, we were all self-funded, so we're pretty broke, and
Probably 100.
and so there's a Insta360 camera that we want to get them. It's kind of like the Google camera. And what we want to do, it costs maybe like $5,000 or something. They have a water tower where you could see the entire village. We want to put it up there.
What are those hunting?
Trail
areas?
cameras,
Trail
but
cams.
it's such a low res
Yeah,
camera.
the quality there is not great.
So what? Okay, so are you publishing something or?
Yeah, the production team is called the title of it's Into the Phenomena. All the evidence that we're sharing and disclosing, it can be found on YouTube. Getting picked up by investors, hopefully, so we can continue all this and just try to put things out that are evidential in nature. Anything that can capture
What's that
first
show
hand.
on? Was it History Channel? Ancient Aliens.
It's probably more like Unidentified. I'd highly recommend looking up Unidentified.
But I'm just saying those people should pick up your story.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
To some degree, we just like to retain some level of credibility.
Okay. Well then,
So,
how
yeah.
about Dan Aykroyd? 'Cause
Yeah, there you go.
He's got a new show. Hey, Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
probably
What about the
jump on-
dude from Blink 182? I heard that.
Tom
dude's on it.
DeLonge was.
Yeah, right.
He was.
There you go.
He was actually looped in with.
Well, I think what you got to do is get a presentation together, and then if you showed it to him, it would.
that our apprehension is that there is a part of the government that is providing disinformation, and so we're trying to stay away
Really?
from the United States as much as
Really?
possible. 100%.
Government doing disinformation.
Right? Who would have thought?
I don't know what to say about all of that.
I think we should take a break. Yeah.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. If you're watching mainstream media, you're not getting the truth about guns. Gun Owners Radio is the easiest way to stay on top of the Second Amendment fight, the fight for your self-defense rights. You can watch our live stream on YouTube every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, or if you're in San Diego, AM 1170, FM 96.1, The Answer. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform. Just search Gun Owners Radio and you'll find our show. Like and subscribe to help defend and restore the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.